We are continuing with our course, that is BPSC 144, and we are learning about Introduction to South Asia. So, this topic, which we are continuing from our past lectures, is a very important topic because it covers all the major countries, all the countries, in fact, from this South Asian region, which is very much developing and which has very vast political system, and they are growing day by day. So there were so many problems that they are facing, there are so many challenges that they are facing, and we are, that is civil society in South Asia. In this unit we will be learning about how the civil society functions, what are the civil society is helping the people raise their voice and getting things done which are very basic needs for the human being. So, to introduce this unit, the term civil society has been explained in variety of ways. So, there are many ways through which this term civil society is being explained. So, originally, it meant a political community. So, since past times, it is the word civil society refers to a political community, a society governed by law under the authority of the state. So, more commonly, it is distinguished from the state, and the term is used to describe institutions that are private. So, basically, when we talk about civil society, we consider it at it is most commonly distinguished from the state, and it is something which is private. So, in that, they are independent from the government. So, first of all, when we talk about civil society, you should remember that civil society is independent from the government interference, and it is organized by individuals, and the target of those individuals to create the civil society is to in pursuit of shared interests, emotions, values, purposes, and many other things. So, first of all, when we distinguish civil society from a state, first of all, please remember that these civil societies are free from the interference of the government. Secondly, this is organized by individuals who have commonly shared interests, emotions, values, and purposes. So, civil society is an arena outside of the family, the state, and the market where people associate to advance common interest. So, this is very important to understand that it is a kind of society which is outside our family, our state. State here means the nation, the country, and the market. And here in civil society, people associate with each other to advance their common interests. So, civil society, we talk about civil society, we associate it with a organization or with a society which talks about the social issues that we see in day-to-day basis. So there are different types of civil society organizations. So the civil society in real sense refers to realm of autonomous, non-governmental organizations, professional associations, etc. So we considered, or in short form, we talk about NGOs. So NGOs is basically non-government organizations, and they are autonomous. So when we talk about a civil society, it is a kind of NGO. Professional associations can also be there, for example the business groups, lawyers association, etc. So we considered them as civil society. So there are causes based interest or pressure groups are, however, a key part of civil society. So there is some cause. So what are these causes? It includes youth wings, elderly social circles, differently abled bodies associations. So these are examples, and further it is the coalition advocacy and self-help groups, sports and leisure clubs. They are also in. You can say that they are a civil society. Then also there is veterans or indigenous peoples organization, religious, faith-based or minority groups, labor or trade unions, women's organizations, social movements, charitable trust, etc. So all these are a part of civil society where people come together outside their family, outside their state, and outside the market. So in these examples, you can easily find out or easily see that all these three things I talked about, family, state, and market, is not included here. So this is how there are different kinds of civil society which is prevalent in our nation states. So these all equally play a pivotal role as civil society. So all these things we have learned have a very pivotal role to play. So the inclusion of civil society voices is essential to give expression to the marginalized and those who often are not heard. So first of all, you should understand that why people create civil societies. There are many reasons, but one of the main reason is that there are many people in our society who are marginalized due to their caste, creed, culture, ethnicity, language, religion, etc. In that case, it is very essential that their voice should be heard, and these civil societies is a way through which they make themselves to be heard by the government. So they express their views, they express their ideas through those civil societies, and that ultimately put an impact on the ruling party or the government who is at the central level or state level, whatever. They take care, they see how the marginalized people, what are their basic needs, how they are living in the country. So they facilitate better awareness and a more informed citizenry who make better voting choices, participate in politics, and hold the government more accountable as a result. So, because I already discussed that how these civil societies give voice to the marginalized section of the society, so it basically talks about awareness. It create awareness among masses, and also it make people more citizenry, more informed citizenry. Thirdly, better voting choices also has a relation with this civil society, and also people participate in politics because there are many who are from the marginalized section of the society. Many people are go unnoticed, so their voices cannot be heard in the political level, but these civil societies help these people from this discriminated strata or the marginalized section to be heard. They can also participate in politics. And thirdly and the lastly, they can hold the government more accountable as a result. So because earlier there were no one to question the government, but with the advent of civil societies, there are people who can question the government, which makes the government more accountable. So that is why civil society has emerged as an important phenomena to the studying of issues of governance in political science. So this is the reason why we are learning this unit, why we are talking about this civil society in our introduction to South Asia subject, because this paper talks about not only the country's geographical features and their cultures, but also talks about how politics is every country of the South Asian region has their own kind of politics. They have a different kind of market, how they're integrated, how are different from each other. And because we learn about the government and the politics in the country, it is very, very needed to understand the civil society and the voice of the marginalized. So it is refereed as the third sector of the society, and the complex variety inherent in the nature and concept has made civil society an integral part in the literature of comparative politics. So this is why we are learning this unit. Now, let's talk about how to define civil society. We will be seeing what are the bases to define civil societies. There are many authors who give different views, different point of views, different interpretation to how to define civil society. So the definition of civil society varies from state to state and from society to society. So each society, each state has their own version of defining civil societies. And in contemporary times, the civil society is being distinguished from the state, as we already have learned in our previous slides, that this is something which is distinguished from the state because the use of institution or in terms to describe the institutions are private. So in real sense, they are not part of the government. So civil societies are not part of the government, but as an important group association or institution that they will always have something to contribute to the society. So although they are not a part of the government, but these civil societies has an aim, has a broader perspective where they have something to contribute to the society. They have something to let the society know, and because of that there were many changes we can see in day to day basis that we'll be learning in our upcoming slides. Now, let's talk about some definitions of civil society. So, I will be talking about few authors who gave their own kind of definitions to civil society. We will be starting with Anthony Giddens. So, according to Anthony Giddens, civil society is a community of citizens linked by common interest and collective identity. So, Anthony Giddens is saying that civil society is a community of citizens who shared their common interest and they considered themselves to be a collective identity. So, further, he says that it manifests the will and interest of the citizen. So, this civil society is something where people's will and people's interest are visible. So it is considered as the third sector of society after government and business. So what are the first two sectors? The first one is the government and the second is business. And civil society is considered to be the third sector of the society. It limits the power of the state and ushers in true and vibrant democracy by enhancing participation. Now we're talking about John Stuart Mill and Alexis de Tocqueville's version of definition of civil society. So, according to them, civil society is the domain of social association which will check excesses of the state. So, this is also very important that state is not always good for human beings, not always doing great things. There are many times that we can see that state is at fault, and in that case, it is civil society which keep a eye on how the state is exercising its power. So now let's talk about Hegel. How Hegel is defining civil society. So subordinated civil society is a mediating domain where particular interest of individual and universal interest of state can be reconciled for producing an ethical basis for modern society. So Hegel is saying that it is a mediating domain where particular interest of individual and universal interest of state can be reconciled. So this is how it is being done. Further, let's talk about Neerja Gopal Jayal. So, according to Neerja Gopal Jayal, civil society includes all such voluntary organizations and social interactions which are not controlled by the state. So, Neerja Gopal Jayal is saying that every organization and social interactions which is not owned by state is a civil society. As simple as that, according to Neerja Gopal Jayal. Now, let's talk about Antonio Gramsci. Civil societies furthers dominant ideologies. So, Antonio Gramsci is saying that it is a way through which dominant ideologies are furthered. So, these are various authors, scholars who talks about civil society. In contemporary times, civil society is being distinguished from the state because of the use of institutions, or in other words, to describe the institutions that are private in nature. Civil society works in parallel to the government. So, again and again, we are talking that government and civil societies are different from each other. They are parallel to each other, and some elements of civil society is often characterized as social movements seek radical transformations on the prevailing order. So, some part or some people say, according to the elements of civil society, that it gave rise to social movements. However, so civil society also includes reformist elements that seek only modest revisions of existing governance arrangements and conformist elements that seek to reinforce established rules. So, in more recent times, civil society have emerged in the form of social activism on issues like, for example, protection of the rights of the farmers, transgender community, women and migrant rights, ecology, health, and insurance. So, nowadays, in contemporary times, it is civil society which talks about these kinds of social activism issues. For example, we learned that, for example, the rights of the farmers, transgender community, etc. Notable Indian political theorists and historians Partha Chatterjee and Shudipta Kobiraj designate Indian civil society from Western civil society. So, according to Partha Chatterjee and Sudipta Kaviraj, we can see that they find the difference between civil societies and Western civil societies. So, according to them, the application of concepts of Western civil society in India is wrong, as the state in India is not as extensive as in the West. So, what Chatterjee and Kaviraj is saying that we should not apply the Western civil societies kind of thing in India, because India is not as the state which works in India is not as extensive as in the West. So that is their point. Now let's talk about the origin of the concept of the civil. So, the origin of the word civil society is ancient Greek political ideas and found mention in the works of Cicero and other Roman thinkers. So, basically, this word originated from Greece. Cicero used the Roman term societas civilis, means good society, to ensure civilization in politics and the good life of the people. So we can find that these concepts of civil societies is there in the Greek works. So traces of the idea of some association of the civil kind can be seen much before during the period of enlightenment. The formal conceptualization of the term is attributed to the theoretical developments emerging in the Scottish and continental enlightenment of the 18th century. So we can see that gradually it was coming up. It took time. There is a chronological order. And for instance, an essay on the history of civil society is a book written by philosopher Adam Ferguson. It was first published in the year 1767. So it is not something which is very, new. It existed back then also. From Greece politics, we can see that there is a mention of civil society. So it is not something very contemporary. It was always there. And also, there is a book published by Adam Ferguson in the year 1767, which talks about the history of civil society. So, generally, civil society is referred to a political association that regulates social conflict by enforcing rules that prevent citizens from harming each other. This can also be a very good definition to define civil society. Now we will be talking about civil society and the state. So here we will be talking about different ideologies, different perspectives, ideas. So how they define civil society according to their perspective. Starting with Marxian perspective. So classical Marxism understood civil society as entirely a different entity. So while accepting the Hegelian idea of civil society as an association of private individuals pursuing private interest, Marx equated this association with bourgeois society based on class interest. So, according to Marxian perspective, although Marx agreed with the Hegelian idea that we have learned how he talks about that it is an association of private individuals, but here Marx also brings bourgeois society's association with the civil society. So Marx forwarded the idea of civil society as a society of self-seeking economic actors. So according to Marx, whoever is there in the civil society, they have some self-seeking economic actors in it. And unlike Hegel and Paine or Tocqueville, Marx completely ignored the democratic principles of civil society association. So it is a very important perspective to understand. We will be learning about more perspectives in our upcoming slides. So it is something which is different, which talks about the civil society in a different perspective. So later Marxists like Gramsci revised the reductionist approach of Marx. So Marxian perspective is not only, we can't say that it is only one perspective, but in Marxism, there are many versions according to different scholars. So the later Marxists like suppose Gramsci, we also learned his idea, how he defines the civil society. So Gramsci revised this reductionist approach of the Marx. Now let's talk about liberal perspective. So the theorists from the liberal school, such as J.S. Mill, Tocqueville, reacted against state intervention. So liberal talks about that the civil society should be separate from the state intervention, and it is seen as paralyzing the independent functioning of civil society affairs. So they wanted against the abuse of state power as usurping the freedom of citizens. So, according to liberal perspective, if state is interfering in civil society organizations, then they are harming and they are hindering in the freedom of the citizens. So, liberals advocated the principle of democracy and participation through civil society. So, in previous slide, we have talked about Marxian perspective where he discarded the practice of democracy, but here we can see that liberal perspective talks about principles of democracy and how people should participate through the civil society. So Tocqueville, for instance, extensively distinguished between the state society and civil society. So Tocqueville described the differences, a comparative analysis between state society and civil society. So, according to Tocqueville, state was a set of formal governmental bodies. So, Tocqueville say that there is a governmental body which is very formal, which includes parliament, courts, police, bureaucracy. So, whereas on the other hand, civil society implied a non-state civilized association of individuals such as parties, public opinion, churches, schools, commercial organizations, organizations for leisure and recreation, etc., that are simultaneously check the excessive centralization of power by the state. So, according to Tocqueville, it is the duty of the civil society to see whether the state is exercising power in a very dominant way or not, and it can be done through these parties and public opinions, etc. So, unlike Marx, Tocqueville excluded the economy from the civil society while exploring the nature of American civil society in the mid 19th century. So, this is the difference between Marx and Tocqueville. Let's talk about the radical perspective. So, radical school of thought in 1970s and 1980s deemed the role of civil society as central to establishing a democratic state. So, the civil society in the late 20th century Europe claimed a radical role towards bringing about a political transformation by replacing the authoritarian state by a democratic order. So it was characterized more as an opposition force and also challenging the communist regime of the Soviet bloc in Central Eastern Europe. So the relevance of the what are the relevance of the radical civil society? It is being theorized in the works of Kuron, who was from Poland, Kurad from Hungary, and became debatable due to internal difficulties in the aftermath of the successful implementation of liberal democracy post 1989 communism. Thus, the focus shifted to liberal society with a participatory approach. So, this was the change. We will be now talking about civil society in contemporary political thought. So, building on the liberal tradition, the modern theories essentially stressed on the positive role of civil society. So, the liberals believe that there is a very positive role that civil society can play, and they inform that no emancipation is possible in the modern world without a strong civil society that can strengthen the public sphere and can provide a haven from a center of resistance to the behemoth state. So, according to the liberal tradition, they believe that for a modern world to emancipate, we should need a civil society which strengthens the public sphere. So, this is something very important to understand, that how civil society is different from the government and why civil society is being formed. The state, through its policy of welfare, seems to have attempted to bridge the gap between the individual and the political state. So, it has failed to surpass the significance of civil society, one of the most potent tools for democratization. So, according to John Keane, state and civil society are not to be seen as independent of each other. So, here John Keane is saying that they are not independent of each other. Rather, civil society and state must become the condition for each other's democratization. So, here John Keane is saying to work together, work intermingly, and there is no hardcore difference between the civil society and the state, and they are not independent of each other. So, with this, civil society could hold the state accountable And the state could ensure vigil over the anarchical tendency of civil society, which might lead to the rise of newer forms of inequality. So it is not there, it is not possible that civil society has became all good and state became negative and civil societies are positive. No, positive and negative aspects of civil societies and state will be present wherever it is the duty of the state to have a have a vigil over the civil society, whether they are particularly not bringing inequality in them. And similarly, civil society is also responsible to see the accountability of the state. Now let's talk about the role and significance of civil societies. So civil societies are an organization of people with policy goals who work within the political process to promote such goals. So groups attempt to influence policy in various ways. So what are these various ways? The first one is advocacy. So these are the significance and the role that civil societies are playing. And the first one we will talking about is advocacy. So organized interest hire representatives to advocate on behalf of the group interest. So there is an issue, there is a group who is impacted by that issue, and there will be representatives from that group who will be advocating their views, advocating their points, advocating their ideas to the outside world. And civil societies coordinate with non-profit organizations whose aim is to work for underprivileged section of the society. So do remember that a state where there was so much poverty, so much hardships that this particular South Asian region was facing, at that point of time, there were many sections of the society which are underprivileged, who are marginalized due to their identities. And for that, there should be a representative who can advocate their issues. So this is what there is a role that this civil society plays. Next comes the communication. One of the most important features is to facilitate communication in the planning process of public policy, which helps in policy making. So civil society also communicates whether they are liking the policy making process or not. So they also play a role in communication. Next comes the public accountability. It increases public accountability, like civic groups can monitor the substantive benefits and effects of policies at ground level. So whether policy is being implemented by the government of India and government of Pakistan, whatever government in this particular South Asian region, there should be accountability. And to monitor that, civil society plays their important role. Next comes the lobbying. It includes the contacting members of government and the executive branch to disseminate information about the positive or adverse effects of the proposed legislation. Second, fifth point is about the support system. Civil societies often support government plans and projects in many ways. So it also give support to the government, which ultimately make government more aware about the needs, make government more confident about their own decisions. And it often includes mobilizing the local resources and initiatives of proper planning and management. So because civil society talks about the problems, the needs of the ground level, it is very important to let the government know the ground level realities. So the civil society plays their role in doing that. Next comes the influencing election. Civil society also influence election, and interest may attempt to influence election in order to help get people who support their issues elected or re-elected. Sorry. So what happens is there are many issues which go unnoticed many times by the government, and because there is a political party, for example, who is taking care of the needs of the particular community or the particular civil society, they will influence the elections, and that will also be seen in the results of the election. So electioneering techniques include giving money to the candidates, endorsing candidates or issues, and conducting grassroots activities such as get out of the vote drive. So these are the things through which they influence the elections. Next role that civil society plays is educating various publics. It is very important because it make people aware. Civil society groups work hard to educate the public, government officials, and their own members and potential interest group members. So, because there are many times we can see lack of awareness among masses, so this civil society provides that awareness. They educate the public on even government officials about the needs, about the wrongdoings at the grassroots levels. Sorry. Next comes mass mobilization. To influence policy making, many groups rely on the efforts of people who are motivated to act on behalf of their issues and causes. So called grassroots activities might include writing letters, making phone calls, contacting policymakers, and demonstrating. So, civil society is also very significant in this aspect, along with monitoring. So, why monitoring? Because it keeps checks on the functionings of the government and they evaluates the government policy for further transparency and greater transparency via social audit. So, whatever policies are being implemented by the government, it is the role of the civil society to see whether the functioning of the government and the government policies which are being implemented are done in a proper way or not, according to a constitution or not, whether they are discriminating, whether they are marginalizing further, and whether they are helping the actual needies from the grassroots level. So, this is how the civil society functions. Next comes the discussion. So, there is an involvement in public discourses through debate about governance. So, they also they also provide a platform to the people to discuss the public discourse, to involve them in it, and it became the voice of the voiceless. So as I already discussed with you all in our previous slides, that how the civil society gives voice to the marginalized section of the society. And who are marginalized section of the society? The voiceless people whose voice is not being heard. So, civil society is significant in helping and providing a platform or voice to various stakeholders who are hesitant to speak, such as farmers, unorganized laborers, and women. So, because they consider themselves very unwanted category in the society, because they have been marginalized, discriminated over, so they feel very they are very scared to express their views, and they often think that who will listen to us. So in that case, these civil societies became the voice of the voiceless. Next is the contemporary issues. So it also plays a significant role in highlighting environmental issues like climate change, rainwater harvesting, safe waters, etc. So currently, as we are sitting in the capital of India, we can see how the environment is so polluted. In that case, there will be many civil societies which will bring the issue in front of the government, how to deal with it. They can also provide various tips, various issues that are being managed by the government. And because of them also, there were many issues that saw light, and those issues are now being seen by the government. Let's talk about the civil society as a link between government and the citizen. So, this is a diagram by the Civils Daily, which was published in January 15, 2019. It talks about how civil society is a link between both the government and the citizen. It is a bridge between them. So, citizens have dialogues, there is elections and consensus which form government, who further make public policies. They give education, and education makes people critical, and then again citizens dialogue within each other, and then this entire circles being uh, like it goes on and on. So this is the cycle through which things is being done. But we can say that it is the civil society which brings a bridge, which became a bridge between the government and the citizens. In cases where citizens voice is not being heard, it is civil society who make the government aware of it. Let's talk about globalization and civil society. So, in the era of globalization, there has been an upsurge of new social movements beyond regional boundaries. So, globalization came in this region in the later 1980s and early 1990s. And because of this globalization, there were many social movements which are beyond regional boundaries. So, the postmodern perspective throws light on the spread of social networks at global scale and the emergence of civil society as a powerful third sector. So, what were the first two sectors? We learned in our class that the first two sectors were, first is the government and the second is the business. So, civil society became the third sector. So, the term civil society has moved beyond its purpose of striving for popular democracy to what World Bank defines a wide array of non-governmental and non-profit organizations. So, what are these organizations? Such as it is labor unions, charitable groups, professional associations, educational institutions, corporation and business groups, etc. So they seek to protect the interest of their in larger society in terms of ethical, religious, cultural, scientific, and philanthropic values. So civil society is a sphere distinct from the market and working towards active participation of its member with the purpose of securing their particular interest. So as we already learned that civil society is something which talks about common interest and collective identity. So they bring people, they bring the society, they give a voice to the society. And due to globalization, the society typically refers to as non-governmental groups, such as there are very famous non-governmental groups who are working for the welfare of the people, including the Amnesty International, Greenpeace, and the International Labour Organization. As well as less formal networks such as activists and citizens, there are many civil society groups. So this globalization became a multidimensional activity that is related to the exchange of economic, cultural, political, international ideas and the growth of free market between nations. So it ultimately helped nations bond together. This is manifested by broadening the market relations. Supporters of globalization believe that it helps to boost the local economy, standard of living of the people, the distribution of national resources, etc. Also, it further helps the locals to have access to foreign products. So globalization is very helpful for people to get know the culture, the features of other countries, and to understand what are the differences, what are the commonalities between them. And also this globalization provided the market which all integrated the nations. So, although the critiques of globalization argue that this term is misconception because it harms domestic economies, indigenous communities, poor population, and the environment. So, when we talk about a particular concept, it always there be positive and negative. So, positive was there were connectedness among nations. People were having an integrated market economy, but on the other hand it also has negative impacts, like it is not good for poor population, it impacts the indigenous communities, etc. So there is no doubt about liberalization and privatization has created volatility in the market affecting the small and medium producers. So there are many changes which globalization brings in the mass movements in South Asia. So let's talk about the civil societies in South Asia. There are many civil societies existed here. So they play a very important role, and it supports that this civil societies in South Asia opposes the unfair rules. So in the last 20 years, the functioning of civil society has become quite popular in the political, administrative, and intellectual fields in South Asia. So what are these non-profit organizations or groups that is there in South Asia? The first, let's talk about Afghanistan's civil society, that is Cooperation for Peace and Unity. So do remember that each society is different from each other and their concerns are also different from each other. So here we can see that Afghanistan talks about the Afghanistan civil society talks about cooperation for peace and unity. Why? Because Afghanistan is a place where there is anarchy since a very long time. So, what is the need of the people there living in Afghanistan? They need peace and they need unity to fight the unjust system. So, what is the what is the role of civil society in Afghanistan? To make people aware, to make mass mobilization, who will be talking about a shared interest, and that shared interest in case of Afghanistan is peace and unity. Next come Bangladesh. So Bangladesh, there is a civil society that is Grameen Bank. So, in according to Grameen Bank, why it is there? Because Bangladesh is an agricultural based country, and there are many rural areas still there in Bangladesh, and that is why they have a particular bank for known as Grameen Bank. In Bhutan, Ability Bhutan Society is there. In India, there is Gunj, Aga Khan Rural Support Program in Pakistan. In Maldives, there is Maldivian Democracy Network. In Nepal, also, Citizens Movement for Peace and Democracy, because Nepal was run by monarchy from a very long time. So the people from Nepal wanted to have democracy. That is why their civil society is taking the issue of democracy. So do remember that civil societies are the mirror of the society which is going on. So whatever the issues, whatever the problems, whatever the ideas that a particular society, particular country is having, civil society will replicate that. Civil society will ask that. Civil society will be mobilizing population based on those issues. In Sri Lanka, there is the Sri Lankan Working Journalists Association, the Asia Foundation, British Council, Plan International, then Climate Action Network South Asia are some of the non-profit organizations that operate in this particular South Asia region. Let's talk about the main pillars of main pillars of society. So society, civil society is all about media, print, electronic, new media, and through which they are impacting the state and government political sphere. They also impacting the economic sphere, and also civil society not only to be done in the public sphere, but it also mobilize people against some issues which are very private, which is there in the family sphere. So in this particular diagram, the political sphere includes that civil societies are not government, political parties, inter-party alliances, elites or elected officials who are acting in their official capacity as representative of the state or nation. So it's also not businesses, entrepreneurs, economic elites, financial institutions, or corporations who exist primarily to make a profit. So, as can be seen in the economic sphere. Lastly, it is not purely a private aspect of society, such as family or home life. Civil society exists between these three spheres. So, what are these three spheres? The political sphere, economic sphere, and the family or private sphere. And it includes all of the non-governmental groups, associations, and the institution that citizens forms and join. Now we will be talking about particular countries, how there are many civil society issues, there are civil resistance, and because of that, there are many civil societies which are working on this perspective. So the first is the tragedy of human rights, a case study of civil resistance in Afghanistan. Let's start with Afghanistan. So the international community was shocked to see the biggest humanitarian tragedy in Afghanistan in mid-August 2021. This is a very fresh memory in our minds that how there was a humanitarian tragedy that happened in Afghanistan in last year. So this happened when the United States military decided to leave the country after nearly 20 years, and soon after the Taliban began to gain a foothold in the country. So because of United States military was leaving, Taliban became active, and Taliban is a terrorist organization, and it gained a foothold in the country. Eventually, the government of Afghanistan lost its control. So, although there was a government in Afghanistan, but it lost its control because of the leaving of the American military and also the upcoming of the Talibani rule. Today, the Taliban control 90% of Afghanistan's borders. This was a huge crisis whose impact is felt in India as well. So, because Taliban is a terrorist organization, because of the religious fundamentalists, run by religious fundamentalists, and because of that, because of their advent in the country, they were already there, but gaining power is something else. And because of that, 90% of the Afghanistan borders are controlled by Taliban. And because of that, many neighboring countries, including India, is very much impacted by this, occurrence. So, unfortunately, the country's economic situation has already deteriorated since the beginning of the year, and the social bond that the Taliban imposes on its citizens affects women in particular to a great extent. So, because all these Talibanis belong to a religious extremist ideology, and because of that, there are many citizens, especially women citizens, who are being devoid of many opportunities, many freedoms, and it is impacting the well-being of women. So, despite such a huge tragedy, the civil societies of Afghanistan fought for their rights, which cannot be ignored. So, it is not like people calmly and silently accepted the changes that is brought by the Taliban's. They fight. They raise their voice, not fight, but they raise their voices. And the world has also witnessed the role played by Afghan women and students when they have sought humanitarian aid from international states and organizations to save their lives. So there are many small civil societies that run in Afghanistan, which are very successfully able to make contact with the Taliban forces and are in constant dialogues with them to establish peace. So there are many civil societies who are trying to maintain and trying to bring back peace in Afghanistan, and for that they are collaborating with Talibani forces. They are having talks, they are having discussions over. So this is how the civil society is trying to bring peace and stability in Afghanistan. So, in addition, civil resistance in most cities in Afghanistan has been led by women. So, this is also a very commendable thing that happened in Afghanistan. That how civil societies and the civil resistance against the Talibani regime is headed by women, and women were seen holding handwritten papers and raising slogans in front of the armed forces. Now let's talk about the Civil Society Alliance for Scaling Up Nutrition in the case study of Pakistan. So, a civil society organization called the Civil Society Alliance for Scaling Up Nutrition, SANKSA, was launched on 23rd of December 2014 in Islamabad. Islamabad is the capital of Pakistan. So, its main objective is to promote food security in the country, first of all, because there are many agricultural issues, there are food shortages in Pakistan, and because of that, this civil society tries to promote food security in the country. Many of its members are health activists, doctors, dietitians, nutritionists, etc. And they work in a cooperative way, and through seminars and with the help of mass media campaigns often try to bring awareness among the people in society. So this way they try to make people aware of the nutrition, the role of nutrition plays in growing up kids, and that is how they are working through the help of conducting seminars and mass media campaigns. Another notable work of the organization is to review the government's policy related to food security policy in Pakistan. So not only they are making people aware, but they are also questioning the government of Pakistan that how their policies are related to food security and how that is helping uh, to see whether the food security issues are being implemented or not. Now let's talk about the farm bills and agricultural reforms, a case study of farmers' protest in India. So recently, the government of India introduced three farm bills related to agriculture, and these bills were passed by the parliament in the September 2020. These three bills are the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Bill 2020. The entire name is this, and Farmers Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Service Bills 2020, and the Essential Commodities Bill 2020. So these three bills, their names as mentioned in your slide, you can see, you can write it down. So these bills infuriated the farmers of the nation, especially farmers of Punjab and Haryana, and they were out on the streets, organized themselves in gamut, and agitated against the farm bills. So the farmers were not happy with these three bills, and they together formed groups and they started protesting. So various farm unions played a pivotal role in the protest and claimed that it will affect the life of a common man. So here in this farmer protest, we can see that there were many unions who played a very important role. So the farmers from Punjab and Haryana were out on the street to protest against these ordinances. Here, the Bharatiya Kisan Union (BKU) and other farmer organizations sought permission from the Haryana government for a protest rally. So on 10th of September 2020, the Bharatiya Janata Party-led state government denied them permission in view of the coronavirus pandemic and that a protest during this time would be not right. So Bharatiya Kisan Union wanted to have a protest and they asked for permission, but the government in Haryana they denied due to COVID pandemic. But the farmers did not pay heed to the government and a rally was organized. So there were 100 farmers rode their tractors to the site of protest and hence some called it the tractor protest. Do remember that this farmer protest is also known as tractor protest because farmers were protesting with their tractors and were raising slogans of save the farmers, save the mandis. This was the slogan. This situation turned violent in some places and it alleged that the farmers were lathi charged by the police. So, several state governments like Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra has opposed the bills and started establishing a dialogue with civil society organizations and trade unions to support the farmer protest. So, in response to the farmer protest, on 19th of November 2021, Narendra Modi government decided to repeal the three farm laws and civil society worldwide took note of the success of farmers group in reversing the decision of the government. So this was a very important event that happened where civil society, because of their protest, because of their power, they they had the power that the government reversed their own decision. Let's talk about the Port City Economic Commission Bill, rise of labor movement in Sri Lanka. So, several opposition parties, civil society groups, and labor unions filed petition to the Supreme Court on 15th of April 2021. So, why they were doing this? Because they challenges the Sri Lankan government's proposed Port City Economic Commission Bill on the Chinese-backed port city in capital Colombo. So this was the reason why they were protesting. So they argues that it directly affects Sri Lanka's sovereignty because China will be there to interfere in their own matters. So the government also faced sharp criticism from the powerful Buddhist clergy as well and the Ceylon Federation of Labour, that was the civil society group's name, who voiced the concern over the bill exempting employers operating within the port city from compliance with Sri Lanka's labour laws. Let's talk about the people's movement in the struggle for democracy, a case study of Nepal. The people's movement by civil society started in Nepal from the fourth week of December 2020. The reason for the public outcry was mainly the proposal to dissolve the House of Representatives by the Prime Minister of the country, who was KP Sharma Oli, on December 20. So it was promptly approved by the President Vidya Devi Bhandari and civil society groups along with the ruling Nepal Communist Party, rival faction party members termed it as unconstitutional and regressive step that hurt the spirit of democracy. So there were several people who were seen gathered in the capital city holding banners of people's mass movement against regression. So the participants in the demonstration included writers, students, artists, and human rights activists, among others. So all these people were the participant of the struggle. Labor Mobility and Security, a study of Bangladesh Civil Society for Migrants. So Bangladesh Civil Society for Migrants is the name of the civil society, which was formed in 2016, and it also hosts the 9th Global Forum on Migration and Development. So people from all walks of society are its members, such as academicians, researchers, students, NGOs, human rights and women rights associations, expatriate groups, private sector, trade unions, and news media are part of this civil society. So it includes a vast section of society which are very, active nowadays, and they make a particular civil society to raise the voice. So the current challenges of migrant workers are related to not proper access to the healthcare system, lack of insurance benefits, and no job security is also the reason. So it persists in almost all countries in the world. And in view of this, the Bangladesh Civil Society of Migrants, together with the government of Bangladesh, addresses the demands of the rights of the migrants. So this is how we can see that how civil society is working. Livelihood, security, and economic environment. Studying livelihood initiatives of the home-based workers in the SAARC region. That was the aim. So, Saba Bhutan is a civil society organization of more than 1,000 weavers, mostly women. So, this is very important to understand that how the civil society organization is made up of 1,000 weavers, women weavers, in fact. So, these home based workers are perhaps the poorest, the most invisible of women, and also the most disempowered. So, why they created this civil society? Because of all these reasons. So, it is a business association of home based workers who are connected with each other through trade, and they established market linkages with each other in the region. So, it provided economic opportunities and resources to the workers like vocational training, the supplies of them yarn, dyes, new designs with clothes, etc. So they work together. They wanted to have more economic opportunity so that they can become empowered, they can become visible, and they can become from a very not from the poor background, but they can develop themselves. So workers can work from home and still be an economic agent to move ahead in life. The association also supports the gender equality and women-led development. Now, let's talk about Maldives. Rights of Employees campaign in the Maldives. So, the Tourism Employees Association of Maldives team is a self-help association which was formed on 13th of July 2008 by young activists in Maldives. So, today around 5,000 activists are members of this association, mostly men. It mainly works for the protection of the rights of employees in the tourism industry. So what is how this team or the Tourist Employees Association of Maldives is being consist of the protection of the rights of the employees, and their members are mostly men, and all these employees were from the tourism industry. So for instance, wages to the workers, salaries on time, no form of discrimination or harassment at the workplace. These were the issues that this team was looking for. So its main aim is to create awareness among the workforce regarding labor rights and laws related to it at different places. The main methods of publicization includes mass campaigns, use of social media, strikes, and peaceful protest, etc. Through the years, team has been able to successfully establish a dialogue between workers and the employers. So it has played a pivotal role in influencing government policy also, and often they insist the government needs to perform its function in a more responsible way and should formulate public policy towards worker rights. Now, let's talk about civil societies and social movements briefly. So, there are many social movement that is related to civil societies. That is the feminist movement in Sri Lanka, Kantha Handa, and PAWA, that is Pacific and Asian Women's Forum. Queer movement in Bangladesh and Nepal. In Bangladesh, it is Boys of Bangladesh, and in Nepal, it is the Blue Diamond Society. Healthcare reforms that we can find in Pakistan, that is Transparent Hands and ADI Foundation, and in Maldives, it is the Journey. Civil rights movements against social injustice in India. Here we can see Naga Mothers Association and Anti-Armed Force Special Protection Act. In Nepal, it is for the peace movement. Samjhauta Nepal is the name. And in Bhutan, it is for the green movement, which known as Royal Society for Protection of Nature. Also, several factors are responsible for India being considered as the Asian giant and leading country in the South Asian region. So, here we will be talking about the contributions of civil society in India. So, there are many PILs, social movement, and with the help of media and lobbying, civil society often influence the government decisions from time to time. So, what are the major social movements in India? That is the Chipko movement, which was against deforestation. There was it was the Sundarlal Bahuguna who was awarded the Padma Vibhushan, and Chandi Prasad Bhatt was honored with Raman Magsaysay Award. Gauri Devi also received Priyadarshini Vriksha Mitra Award in 1986 because they this Chipko movement was all about protecting the forest, protecting the forestation and the environment. Secondly, it is Narmada Bachao Andolan, which was about the dam that was to be set up on Narmada River. And here Medha Patkar and Baba Amte was the leader. Next is the Right to Information movement, which talks about our rights to get information, which was led by activist